Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary, greetings from Utah. It's a delight to be here with you today. I'm not sure all of us can appreciate that one of your skill sets is sitting there hour after hour and answering our questions, but thank you. We've paid homage, rightly so, to C-SPAN for their 40-year anniversary over the last day or two, but interestingly, I think we've missed one of the most significant 40-year anniversaries. 40 years ago, yesterday, President Carter, Sadat, and Begin signed the historic peace treaty. I happened to be 19 years old and living in Jerusalem at the signing of that treaty, and I grabbed a newspaper, and for years and years I kept it in a file in my office. And when I came to Congress, I took that newspaper and I had it framed, and this now hangs in my office as a reminder of the many lessons that came out of that, among other things, that we can do what seems near impossible, that we can bring these groups together that seem so far apart, that we can be bipartisan in the way that we approach these. And I worry that our relationship with Israel is becoming a partisan issue, and I hope that it's not. I think our success depends on this being a bipartisan issue. Could you touch just on a minute on what the administration is doing that might take us back to a point like this in our relationships with Israel and their Arab neighbors?
Sure. So your point is well taken. I'm also reminded, if I have the history right of that day, that if you looked at the outsiders the day before, or at least a week before, months before, it seemed almost unimaginable that would have happened. So I'm mindful. We were talking about North Korea a little bit ago. As difficult as these problems look, if you continue to work at them, if you continue to engage in good faith negotiations and try and grind away and resolve these resolutions, that sometimes things happen quickly and big. And I'm hopeful that the Trump administration will be able to achieve some of those. With respect to the efforts in the Middle East, there has been a lot of groundwork laid, working with each of the countries in the region, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis, the Emiratis. I'm going to miss a few along the way. We've worked with the Iraqis. I was just in Lebanon. I was in Israel. In my previous role, I met a number of times with Palestinian leadership, working to try and understand the conflict as it sits today, not as we might have imagined it 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 30 years ago, and to try and identify those places where we can find congruence, overlap, places where we can acknowledge the history but move past it. And we will lay out our vision for that in the not-too-distant future. And I hope that every one of those countries will take a good look at it. There'll be something in there, I'm sure, that they don't find too whippy. But I hope they will each take a serious look at it and take it as a good faith effort to resolve this long-term challenge.
Thank you. And to your point about the naysayers, I actually was in Galilee the night that it was signed, and Syria had said they would invade over the Golan Heights. I remember as a 19-year-old looking up and seeing the Golan Heights, wondering if they were coming. But I think it's a great testament that we can do these hard things. Unfortunately, this week we've also seen rockets launched at Israel from Hamas, from Gaza. There's some belief that Iran had a hand in this. Can you address that? And also, is that show us one of the flaws in the Iran nuclear deal with the long-range ballistic missiles not being addressed? And is this an example of why that's a problem?
Well, with respect to the recent rocket attacks, when I came this morning, I think both sides had agreed that they had gotten to a pretty good place. Whether that'll hold, I don't know. It was pretty fragile when I had the last conversation, but I'm hopeful that it will. Second, I couldn't tell you if the Iranians were directly involved in this particular attack. I can tell you that they underwrite Hamas, the terrorist entity that is responsible for those missile launches. And then finally, your third question was about the JCPOA. Look, most of the behavior that has led to Iran being the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism increased during the JCPOA. It was because the JCPOA prevented the administration from taking any action against Iran. They said that it didn't, but in fact, you just need to look at the activities that they engaged in. They permitted Iran to expand. They gave Iran resources. They opened up economic wealth for Hezbollah and for Shia militias all across Iraq. Those were the kind of things that our policies are trying to cabin, to reduce the capacity for the Islamic Republic of Iran to engage in terror behavior, whether that's in the Gaza Strip or the assassination campaigns that are taking place in Europe or the missile launches that are coming out of Yemen.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I yield my time.
Thank you. Ms. Titus.